What's up, YouTube? It is Ashley and I am back with another reaction video. Thank you for joining. Pardon my absence. I've just been super duper busy and I'm working alone here, guys, okay? So forgive me, but I'm back with the reaction videos and I have a doozy for you today. I am reacting to the popular and historical moment in history, literally, is the Joe Rogan meets Trump podcast. Thank you, Joe Rogan, for having Trump on. I think everybody needed to see this. It was really nice to not have these gotcha moments, but actually have someone who was interested in just hearing what Donald Trump has to say, having a good conversation. This thing lasted 3 hours. I watched every minute of it, and I'm here to show you some of the most important parts that I thought were important, and also some of my favorite moments. So if you didn't have an interest in watching 3 hours of Joe Rogan and Donald Trump talking, I got you. So okay, let's get right into this, and thank you for watching my video, and please do like this video. Give your girl some love. It really does help to grow the channel, and I would greatly appreciate it if you're into this type of content. So let's not wait anymore. The video starts now.
Over the years, all those presidents, you've had 92% were politicians and 8% were generals. General Eisenhower, General Washington, right? General George Washington, you had generals. So it's 8% no admirals, 8% generals, and 92% politicians. You know, they're politicians and they go on. So they never had a business guy, or they never had a guy that wasn't elected to an office. They were.
And just for context, because I realized I missed the part where Joe asked a question, he's asking what it was like when you first came in and you had to pick your administration, and how did you feel being that you didn't really have a political background, and now he's getting into it's something we've never seen before. Usually you have a couple terms of government before you get to presidency or something in Congress or something, but obviously he was not a politician prior to being a president, so that's kind of what he's explaining.
We're all like Ronald Reagan was really, he was a movie actor, and then but he became the governor of California for, I think, 2 terms, and then he ran. So you'd never had a thing like this. But I, you know, in terms of me, and sometimes I'd use it as an excuse, and I don't like having excuses actually, but I'd use it as an excuse. I had to rely on people that I respected or liked, but that I didn't know that well, because I didn't know them that well. Some of those people I campaigned against, because, you know, when you have 18 people, we had mostly politicians running in the election, you know, running in the primaries, and they got knocked out one by one. But I got to like some of them. Some of them I didn't like at all. I don't like them now. And I'd rely on them, and I'd rely on other people. So all of a sudden, people would come in. I'd like to recommend so-and-so to be Secretary of State. And I'd have 3, 4 people recommend. The one thing I can tell you, everybody wants the position.
Of course.
No, but sometimes I'll hear a lot of people don't want to work with Trump because Trump is tough to work with, etc. Let me tell you, everybody wants to be any one of these positions. They die for it.
Of course.
And you even hear that now, even some of the ones who are a part of his administration who know they'll never get to be a part of the next administration because maybe of, you know, some discourse they've had or some poor decision making. Because, you know, like Trump is saying, he knew people like on a friendly basis, maybe as a celebrity, you know what I mean? But he really didn't know them on the political side and where they lie and what they're actually like politically. What do they believe in? How do they run their own household? So he was put in this very new position and had to kind of rely on the people that he kind of knew to help him get it together, because this was his first time, right? So pretty interesting. And
they don't want to be known. I mean, there's a particular guy in New York, primarily, very big, very successful, very strong, very political, although he's not a politician. He'd give anything to be Secretary of State, but if they ask him, no, I don't think I would do it. But in the meantime, begging for it, okay, begging. They all,
I believe you.
Everybody wants it.
But by
the way, no matter what you do, but it's very dangerous to pick somebody outside of a politician, because a politician's been basically vetted for years.
Right.
You pick a business guy, and they've never been vetted at all, and they're, you know, the head of a big company or something, but they've never been vetted. You know nothing about his personal life. You know nothing about where he's been. When you put him in, it's a little bit dangerous, because all of a sudden they get checked up and you hear things that you're saying, wow, this is not going to work out too well. So it's very dangerous. Picking people that are outside of politics is somewhat dangerous.
So you're kind of stuck in a position where you have to pick established people. And then the problem with established people is established people are already indoctrinated into the system.
And they're stiffs in many cases.
Perfectly said. And I love Joe Rogan. He's a great interviewer. He really is. But that is it. Essentially, he had to rely on the people that have already been indoctrinated by the system. They're already a part of the deep state. You know what I mean? So they're going to manipulate things and put him in a position where he's already very vulnerable to make decisions where he hasn't fully grasped the depth of those decisions. You know what I mean? And these people are evil. They are corrupt. And these are the people he had to rely on. So this second term, I think Trump's going to be a lot more robust, a lot smarter, a lot more ahead of the game, and I think it's going to be amazing. So fingers crossed, November 5th. Let's go.
The survivors. I find that,
what do you mean by stiffs? When you say stiffs?
A stiff, they don't have nothing. They have nothing. Or they're smart and survive. One little thing. So there was a congressman years before I ran. He was in Congress for many years, like 28 years. And, there's a reason when somebody's there for 28 years, you got to be sort of smart.
Right.
You have all the scandals. And I realized he was a survivor.
And so they never do anything controversial. They never take any chances or speak their opinion that's outside of the... Yeah.
And yet I don't disrespect him for it.
So
I actually respected the guy more in a certain way. I said,
because he did survive.
You know what? He's been...
Perfectly said. And I agree with this completely. And we all know that to be true. You have some people who are just afraid to rattle the cage. They don't want to lose their job. We saw that in the arm. People were afraid to speak up. COVID was a huge part of that. I was being, honestly, publicly lynched and lashed daily because of going against the grain. So, and like he said, to keep a position like that for that many years, you have to be pretty quiet in the decision room. You know what I mean? Because we all know, look at Trump. He's gone against the grain and they have thrown everything they could possibly throw at him to make him discreditable, to make him seem like he's Hitler. Like, how insulting to compare this man to someone who literally assassinated millions and millions of people. But that's how it goes, right? So I thought that was pretty interesting and honest of him.
Been there for 28 years and he made it through. A lot of people don't make it through.
It's a good way for non-exceptional people to survive.
Well, it is.
Yeah.
I mean, it certainly is.
So you're in there. You have 10,000 appointments you have to make. So you're getting advice from people. And at what point in time did you have a moment in time where you realized these are bad choices? Like some of these people I shouldn't have had in there.
Oh, the biggest mistake I made was I picked some people. I picked some great people, but you don't think about that. I picked some people that I shouldn't have picked. I picked a few people that I shouldn't have picked. And
neocons?
Yeah, neocons or bad people or disloyal people
or corrupt people or people who just really don't mean the country well, because that is a fact. There are a lot of people in the White House currently and in the surrounding offices, where they get to, even the CIA and all these different organizations that just literally are bought and paid for. And we know that already, but let's move on. So in this clip, Trump is going to kind of get into his thoughts on the debate with Kamala and kind of debating the moderators and kind of piggybacking off of the biased media and that 60-minute interview with Kamala Harris. And anyways, we'll get into it.
I think that David Muir and that woman that was aside, I never even heard of her, but they kept interrupting me. It was like, I said, how many people am I debating here? I got this one and I got you two. But he went after me 11 different times. It's interesting. I always thought he was a nice guy, but he's just like the rest of them,
Well, that's his job, unfortunately, and I'm sure what they want. You're right. Well, the problem was they fact-checked you and they didn't fact-check her. And one of the most egregious examples of that was when she said that there are no troops right now deployed in war zones. Yeah. There's a very famous viral video that went online of troops in a war zone saying, well, what the fuck are we then?
And as of today, there is not one member of the United States military who is in active duty in a combat zone in any war zone around the world the first time this century. What? But let's understand.
So where the are we right now?
What the fuck are you talking about, Miss VP?
Because there's thousands of them. Dan Crenshaw.
Because she don't know shit about shit. And we need to start recognizing that. Imagine the VP who's currently in office stood on the debate stage and said there is no soldiers out on any serious battlegrounds. And that's not true. So if she's currently in office and doesn't know what the fuck is going on, what the fuck makes us feel like another 4 years of office as a higher position, she's going to know what the fuck's going on? She said she's been in the rooms with Biden and all his decision making, and nothing comes to mind that she would change. This girl's deluded.
The congressman posted on his Instagram all of the various examples of troops that are deployed, thousands and thousands of troops that are currently deployed.
Stupidly deployed.
But the point is, if this is going to be an actual real debate and not a propaganda exercise, if it's going to be a real debate, you have to fact check everybody.
So
like if someone says maybe she thought there was no, which is also a problem. So it's one of two things.
Yeah.
It's either it was not true, it was a lie on purpose, which is terrible, or it was the opposite. It was ignorance, which is also terrible.
Well, Joe, when I said crime is soaring, he said, no, crime has gone down. I said, where did you hear that one? Crime has gone down. I mean, I'm debating with this guy, but I've had that.
Well, there was amended FBI statistics that came out after that showed that crime had gone up substantially.
And by the way, the statistics were a fraud, because when they put out the statistics, they didn't include some of the worst places. They didn't include some of the worst cities, some of the most deadly places. But when the real numbers came out, I turned out to be right. But I haven't.
You turned out to be right, but then there's another problem. Unreported crime is way up because people have lost. Look, the morale that the police department has in a lot of these cities where they've done this defund the police bullshit. Right. The morale of these poor cops, it's fucking horrible. Yeah. It's the dumbest idea of all time. But what they've done is they've made these cops feel terrible. They're like good cops. I think cops are just like everybody else. Most of them are great. It's like everybody else. But if you run into one carpenter and he does a shitty job in your house, you say carpenters fucking suck. But they don't suck. Most of them are great. And that's the key thing with cops. But the point is, like, they did all of these things in this very foolish way. Right. And these cops are suffering the consequences of it. And so subsequently what happens is a lot of crime is unreported. A lot of crime, like you call the cops, they're too busy. They can't even get to you. Oh, your house.
And a lot of cops just aren't doing their jobs anymore. And rightfully so. Would you go put your life on the line in a high crime neighborhood when you could do your job and possibly go to jail for the rest of your life? Or, you know, you have these people invoking these groups that have no appreciation for even what you do. And then the same people that are talking about defund the police are the same people that would be calling the police if they needed some help. The same people who are calling for defunding the police are not the people who live in these high crime areas. They live in the suburbs with low crime. It's crazy.
Got broken into. Sorry, it doesn't even make a report. There's a lot of people that they just give up.
It's so sad what's happened. And I'll tell you what, I go to police funerals, and we went to one in Long Island. I visited the family in Long Island, a very big deal. It's so dangerous. People don't realize the car, dark windows, pull over. He's a gentleman. Please pull over. Door opens, guy comes out firing. Even if they were allowed to pull out their gun, which they're not, they can't, pull
do
out.
Do it in time. Yeah.
They still wouldn't have time.
It's every cop's worst nightmare.
They opened a door, and he was killed, and his partner was hurt. He was killed. And you don't even have an eighth of a second to think. And it is such a dangerous job. That in particular, think of it. You go up to a car, you don't know who's sitting there with a gun. And if they have a gun, you really don't have a chance. You're not allowed to have your gun out, by the way. They have very strict rules. So, number one, but even if you could have your gun out, the door opens and bullets start firing out, and especially where they have the dark windows, where they have the darkened windows. It is such a dangerous profession. And it's very hard to get cops now because they're not given any backup. And you're right. they have like an eighth of a second to make a decision that's going to change their life. If they make the wrong decision, they're going to end up on the front page of every newspaper in the country. Yeah. And they're going to lose their house and their pension and their job, and their wife is going to be gone, and everything's going to be gone.
And there's another thing that people don't talk about. How many of them have PTSD? Probably most of them. Yeah, these guys are seeing people shot all the time. Yep. I've talked to a ton of cops about it, and a lot of cops commit suicide. A lot of cops are deeply depressed. But
we have to give them back their dignity. We just have to give them back. You said it so good. You never hear anybody say that. You're never going to have it perfect. You're going to have a bad apple.
In everything, in every profession.
But every time there's a bad apple, that gets massive publicity, and it taints everybody else.
But it's also this very irresponsible thing where people say defund the police, get rid of the police. Even Kamala Harris was a part of that. That it's a very stupid way to look at it. What you should do is fund the police. You should have better training. You should have cops that feel more appreciated. You should have something that helps mitigate this PTSD that all.
I agree with that 1,000%. As a matter of fact, we should fund them to be more trained in mental health, because a lot of those situations we're seeing where these erratic criminals are doing something crazy. Sorry, the light, guys. This is madness. Anyways, but when they're doing something crazy, it's usually mental health related, right? So if we could put more funding into their pathway to help them be more prepared for some of these types of situations, I think it would do a lot better than just saying defund them completely. I think that is so wrong, and nobody actually believes that.
We're doing pretty well now. I don't know, maybe in a week from now, say, sorry about that, I was wrong, but we're leading everything. And I think we're going to have a very good election. But I tell people, because people are starting to get to know her, but she was defund the police. She was all these transgender operations. If you wanted a sex change and you were in detention and you demanded a sex change, they would give you a sex change.
Well, the wildest one is this idea of giving free sex change to illegal immigrants.
That's right. In detention.
That is the wildest thing. Is that the biggest problem you have? Yeah. You just walked here from Guatemala. You need to become a girl.
But she was in favor of it. Yes. So think of it. She changed. She changed 15 policies. In fact, I'm going to send her a MAGA cap.
She stole your idea about no tax for tips.
I came up with this idea that honestly nobody ever heard of. And now it took her 2 months, but you know what? All of a sudden,
it caught fire,
and she just put it into a little speech.
Yeah,
well,
it became
but
popular.
I think we still have that issue. I think that issue is a good one for us. But now we have a lot of good issues. We had the other day. Think of how simple some of these things are. We're trying to get cars built in the United States. Detroit has been really tough. It's been a disaster. They have a huge factory, a huge car auto plant being built by China in Mexico, make cars, sell them in the United States, put everybody out of business. Right, here we go again. I said, if that plant is there when I'm president, I will put 100 or 200% tariffs on every car. They'll be unsaleable in the United States. And they just announced they're not going to build the plant because they think I'm going to win. Think of it. They're not going to build the plant. This was the biggest plant in the world. It would have more than all of Michigan makes. So that's how big. This is what we're getting to. This
is what leadership is. He's not even elected yet, but people are already on notice because they're like, if he wins, this won't be a good business move because he's going to tax the shit out of me. And he talks more about tariffs, and we will watch that as well. But the man knows what he's doing. He knows what he's talking about, and he needs to be president. He literally does. Americans, if you don't want to be, I don't know, a third world country in the next decade, y'all need to wake the fuck up. It's time now. She's not it. She's just not. At least do your research.
And I said, if that plan goes up, I want them to understand if I win, I'm going to tax those cars at the rate of 100 or 200% a piece so that you won't be able to sell them in the United States. They just announced they're not going to build the plant.
Yeah, I read this.
I did a big favor for our country by doing that.
Absolutely.
And I'm not even there yet. To me, the most beautiful word, and I've said it.
And I'm not even there yet. How can you not respect this man? Like, seriously, this girl talked about, Kamala was talking the other day, and she's like, if I don't have the answer for a policy, it's because I need time. I'm kind of a nerd that way. I need to do my research. Like, girl, What? That didn't hit the way you thought it would. Trust me.
This for the last couple of weeks in the dictionary today, and any is the word tariff. It's more beautiful than love. It's more beautiful than anything. It's the most beautiful word. This country can become rich with the proper use of tariffs.
Did you just float out the idea of getting rid of income taxes and replacing it with tariffs?
Well, okay.
Were you serious about that?
Yeah, sure. But why not? Because our country was the richest relatively in the 1880s and 1890s. A president who was assassinated named McKinley. He was the tariff.
Gee, I wonder why he was assassinated. It almost feels like anytime someone goes against the corrupt grain, messing with these corrupt people's pockets by doing what's really right for Americans, they either get assassinated or some scandal comes out or whatever have you. It's crazy, and people really need to wake up to this. But
King, he spoke beautifully of tariffs. His language was really beautiful. We will not allow the enemy to come in and take our jobs and take our factories and take our workers and take our families unless they pay a big price. And the big price is tariffs. And he'd speak like that, but he was right. And then around in the early 1900s, they switched over stupidly to, frankly, an income tax. And you know why? Because countries were putting a lot of pressure on America. We don't want to pay tariffs. Please don't. Believe me, they control our politicians.
But think about that for a second. Governments in charge for ages would rather tax Americans' income tax than tax countries that are bringing in goods and services. And a big part of the reason why that would make sense to me is the leaders of these countries would way prefer to line the politicians' pockets for them to bend the rules, because they would pay way less doing that than they would having to pay actual taxes on the business they're bringing to the US. And think about how corrupt that is. And think about how much you as the American suffers with being taxed your income, tax your everything you purchase, tax. And these guys just get to take your jobs, take your wages, tax you to oblivion, and they get off scot-free. These rich people, the same party that tells you they want to tax the rich, they need to be talking to themselves.
First of all, I love this idea of you teaming up with Robert Kennedy.
Right.
And I love this Make America Healthy Again idea, because there are chemicals and ingredients in our food that are illegal in other countries because they've been shown to be toxic. There's pesticides and herbicides, and there's a lot of shit that's been sprayed on our food that really is unnecessary. And there's a lot of health consequences that people are suffering from a lot of these things. And
I brought this chart for you.
Beautiful.
Because I had a feeling you'd be asking me. Look at this chart. These are healthier countries. Look where the United States is. I'm going to send this to RFK Jr.
So this is, something along the, I was actually talking to RFK today, and he told me that more than 70% of young men are ineligible for the military because of their health.
I could see it.
That's crazy.
A lot of it's obesity.
As he just pointed on, America has a huge obesity problem. And Joe Rogan is right. And honestly, it's a major thing when your fruits and vegetables are being sprayed with pesticides, or you see these codes on your food and you find out your apples aren't apples, your berries aren't berries. Like, it's mostly GMO, it's fake. It's like there are people who are like bending their bananas and it's not tearing. Like, that is a scary thing. I go get cucumbers. I love cucumbers, and they're seedless all the time. These fake seedless fruits they're trying to give me, and our bodies are not made to break this stuff down. You know what I mean? We are not made to process all of this garbage, which is why you're seeing an increase in cancer, all different types of cancers, increase in different health issues, increase in autism, increase in so many different things. And I definitely think food is on the top of the list.
Here's the life expectancy versus health expenditure.
Same chart.
Yeah.
Did you see that?
USA.
Wow,
yeah.
That's pretty good.
Jamie's the best.
He's very good.
He's the best.
But look at that. Look where the USA is.
It's not good. And that's our food. That's our diet. That's sedentary lifestyle. That's our diet. That's the chemicals we ingest. That's what that is.
But RFK is going to be very, I think he's a great guy.
I love the fact that you guys teamed up.
Yeah.
And are you completely committed to have him a part of your administration?
Oh, I am. But the only thing I want to be a little careful about with him is the environmental. Because, he doesn't like oil. I love oil and gas. I think
just keep him out of that.
To fire. So I'm going to sort of keep him out of a little. I said, focus on health. Focus. Yeah. You can do whatever you want. But I got to be a little bit careful with the liquid gold.
Do you have anyone that is pressuring you to not work with him? Have there been people
to not work with who?
RFK Jr.
Yes.
Yes, I would imagine. Because financially, he can put a dent.
I would say that, and, I think in many ways they've done a good job. In many ways they've done a bad job. But I would say that the big pharma wasn't thrilled when they heard that, I've actually always gotten along very well with him. I've known him a long time. He's a different kind of a guy. He's very smart, great guy. And he's very sincere about this. I mean, he really is, he thinks we spend a fortune on pesticides and all this stuff. And then you end up with, that chart is a terrible chart, the one previous. It's such a bad chart when you look at where we are compared to other countries that don't spend 10 cents.
Right.
So, and you save a lot of money. But yeah, I've had some people that aren't exactly thrilled. You can imagine, right?
Sure.
It's a good question, actually.
Well, certainly if
it doesn't affect me.
Some pharmaceutical drugs that have been prescribed.
It doesn't affect me because he's a G. That's what I'm talking about there, Trumpy. But you know why that would bother Big Pharma and other corrupt places and organizations and people is because exactly that. He's for exposing some of the poison that Americans are being fed, literally and figuratively. And I think it's a great partnership. I loved that he endorsed Trump, and Trump 2024, man, let's go. Who's not on the lineup that's worth having? We don't want Beyonce, okay? Without keeping you any longer, that literally was just a scratch of the interview. There's so many more parts that I did enjoy, and they went into so many different things. Honestly, if I was to try to break it all down for you, we'd be here all day. You might as well just go watch the real thing at that point. But just to give you some highlighted conversations and what the dialogue was, if you're not interested in reading the whole thing, watching the whole thing, hopefully you at least watch some of these snippets because I think they're very important information, number one. Number two, it was really cool to kind of see these two guys who are very different but have a lot in common on the same note. Joe Rogan historically has never been a fan of Trump. So he always said, actually, historically, I would never put him on my platform because I don't want to help him at all. And here we are. He's on his platform. And this is definitely going to help Trump. Absolutely. And I don't think he minds doing so anymore. They did talk about him interviewing Kamala, and he seems very eager to do so. I think he just kind of wants to see both sides. That's a Joe Rogan thing. Anyways, he likes to be fair to the argument. But I don't think she'll ever do it. I've seen she's appearing on Club Shay Shay and girl, bye. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed this. Hopefully, for some people sitting on the fence, maybe this answers some questions you had. You got to see Trump in a light that's not like, where he's being hardball and offensive at times and stuff, even though I love all of that. But it was really nice to see him more relaxed, talking to the boys. You know what I mean? I thought this interview did very well for him. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it. But until next time, I'm going to see you on a new video very soon. I have some more reactions coming that I hope you guys enjoy. And as always, I appreciate you stopping by. Thank you for watching. And remember to like and subscribe. See you later.